All right, folks, thank you so much for your patience. We were just waiting for a couple minutes there to make sure everybody was able to log on and access the webinar. And we're going to go ahead and get things started now. So thank you for being here. My name is Asa Dean. I am the executive director here at Friends of the Forest. And, you know, we were really excited about this speaker series and particularly excited to get our friends Sterling and Eric in here today. Whether you are like me, someone who can think of nothing dreamier and more exciting than spending weeks or maybe even months on a trail hiking, or whether you're somebody that had never even heard of through hiking until the movie Wild came out. This is going to be a great webinar. We're going to get to learn about one of these through trails, these National Scenic Trails that runs right through our backyard. So we are really excited to have Eric and Sterling here today. But before I bring them on, I just want to say a couple things first. First and foremost, just a huge thank you to all of you that are out there. If you're a part of this webinar, you are somebody who is familiar with Friends of the Forest and probably familiar with all the work that we do, and especially during the time of COVID, when there's been a huge increase in usage of the forest. And, you know, we've been putting out a lot of information to try and help people navigate how to be out there safely, how to make sure that everything stays open, people stay healthy. And we've been able to get really far up to this point. And that a lot of that is thanks to all of you and people like you that are really paying attention and taking the time to be out there safely. We know it is kind of a sanctuary and one of the few places you can go and be outside. So thank you for that. Please continue that. Help us keep things moving smoothly and help maintain everybody's health and safety out there. Just a quick little aside here. I just wanted to let folks know there's been a lot of questions. Are we going to start having community hikes anytime soon? Are we going to be able to get back out in the forest? We are really hoping to get back out there and start leading some community hikes as soon as we possibly can. You know, our kind of bottom line is we're not going to be able to start doing that until Skagit County enters phase 3. So once we enter phase 3, we're going to be posting our hikes again. We're going to be having all sorts of things that we're going to be able to do with extra safety precautions to make sure that people are able to join us and go experience the forest land in a safe way and still get to go on our community hikes. So please check back on our website. We're going to continue posting updates there as things change. Before we introduce Eric and Sterling here, I do want to send it over to my friend Mackenzie Wilson, who is going to give us a quick little rundown on how questions are going to work during the webinar. So Mackenzie, you can go ahead and click on there.
All right. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me, Asa?
Sure can.
All right. Awesome. So my name is Mackenzie. I'm the outreach director for Friends of the Forest, and I'll be fielding questions during this presentation. So if during the presentation you find yourself with a question, you can click the Q&A button that'll be down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, type in a question, and as soon as we get to a break in the presentation where we'll take and answer questions, we'll try to get to yours. And Eric and Sterling will answer those for us. And then if we don't get to your question during a break, don't worry, we'll probably get to it at the very end of the presentation. And I'll turn this back over to Asa.
Right on. Thank you so much, Mackenzie, and thanks for all your hard work and your time at Friends of the Forest. For those of you that don't know, Mackenzie's going to be moving on to grad school here pretty soon, and we're going to be saying goodbye. So a huge, huge thank you to Mackenzie for all the work you've put in over the last few years here. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Asa.
All right, so the last thing I'll say before we get things going here, we are going to have this video on our YouTube channel after the recording. So if you didn't get to see everything, or you aren't able to stay the whole time, or somebody you know might be interested in it, go ahead and check out our YouTube channel as well. And if you are feeling appreciative and feeling like you want to support the Friends a little bit, I'll make sure to put the website for our donation page into the chat box, so that, and if anybody during this wants to go ahead and support us, you know, this is something that donation money and membership money goes towards supporting, especially in a time we can't be all together, being able to put on programs like this. So if you feel so inclined, I'll be sure to put that in the chat box. And without further ado, I'm very excited to welcome from the Pacific Northwest Trail Association, Sterling Collins Hill and Eric Wollberg.
Hello, Asa. I'm Eric. I'm the communications manager here at Pacific Northwest Trail Association, and with me is.
Hi, I'm Sterling Collins Hill. I'm the Western Washington Regional Coordinator for the PNTA, and I kind of oversee operations on the western half of it. It's about 1,200 miles long, and from about the North Cascades over to the Olympic coast is 600 miles, and I sort of manage everything that happens on the ground in that region.
Yeah, so I think we'll just be, as Mackenzie mentioned, we'll be taking questions throughout the presentation. If anything comes to mind you're curious about, please feel free to type that question in, and we'll get to that later on in the presentation. For now, I'm just going to run through about 20 slides here. We're going to talk about the PNT and how it relates to the Anacortes Community Forest Lands. So one moment here. Let's share our screen. Oh. Great. So here we are. So as we mentioned, part of my role here at PNTA is the communications manager. I do a lot of work with trail information, taking people's questions about the trail by phone, by email, and through online forums. We're here to help people understand what trail conditions are in the field and a little bit more about preparing for trips out on the trail. We also do outreach and education work with communities and with various partners to help promote the trail. And that's a big part of what we do. Turn it over to Sterling here.
Yeah, and like I said, I oversee trail operations on the western half. I do have a counterpart out in eastern Oregon, based sort of on the Colville National Forest. But yeah, we work with partners quite a bit, the U.S. Forest Service, national parks, state forests, and communities around throughout the trail and alongside, including towns such as the Anacortes and the forest lands and the friends thereof, to all sort of come together and work towards our goal of maintaining and promoting the Pacific Northwest National Scenic Trail. You know, most of my job is taken up with trail maintenance, and we do that through our paid crews. We run performance crews, which are youth and young adults out there maintaining the trail, but we also work a lot with volunteers of all kinds, you know, and whether that's hanging signs or, you know, digging in the dirt or cutting logs that have fallen across the tree. It takes a lot to keep these trails open and usable for all the different kinds of recreators out there. Yeah, so a lot of things go into that, and we're a small organization, so we all sort of help each other out quite a bit. We do a lot of outreach and education and fundraising and stuff like that. So it's a real team effort around here, which I really like.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to having more volunteer events, more outreach in the future. As Asa mentioned earlier, I think a lot of those programs right now are on hold until counties move to phase 3. The PNT does pass through some phase 3 approved counties in Eastern Washington. So we'll talk a little more later on about some of the volunteer opportunities that are already available there. We're hoping that more will be available here in the Puget Sound region in the coming weeks and months. So let's talk a little bit about the Pacific Northwest Trail itself.
Hey guys, I'm gonna interrupt you there. I just want to let you know that we can see that you are in presenter view there, so we're seeing all of your slides in front of us.
Okay, let's make a change here. Does that look better?
Much better, perfect.
Perfect. First Zoom webinar, thank you for bearing with us, everyone. So yeah, this is the Pacific Northwest Trail, and I think this image really, captures the spirit of the trail. On the top, we see Glacier National Park, where the eastern terminus is located. 1,200 miles to the west, the PNT has its western terminus at Olympic National Park on the Wilderness Coast. And this idea has been around for 40 years. For 40 years, people have been hiking the trail, equestrians have been using it, and people have been finding adventure out there. The man responsible for all of that, his name is Ron Strickland, and he was inspired to create the trail while he was out on a backpacking trip in the North Cascades with guidebook author Harvey Manning, which is a name some of you might recognize. There we go. Thank you. While he was out on that trip, Harvey Manning said, tomorrow, the Pacific Ocean. And it inspired this idea in Strickland's mind of creating an east-west oriented National Scenic Trail, similar to the Pacific Crest Trail and Appalachian Trail that were recently designated. And in 1977, he founded the Pacific Northwest Trail Association to pursue that idea. And he began working with grassroots volunteers and local communities to make that happen. And he created the Pacific Northwest Trail Association to advocate for the trail to become designated a National Scenic Trail in Congress. So what is a National Scenic Trail and what sets them apart? First, today, science has shown that we know health benefits come from being outdoors, but 50 years ago, this was a pretty novel idea. In the 1960s, the Johnson administration started to investigate this, and they wanted to create a national system of trails to benefit the public for fitness and for health. And they commissioned a study called the Trails for America. And the National Trail System Act of 1968 was one of the results of that study. And it began with just 2 national scenic trails, the Appalachian Trail in the eastern part of the country, and the Pacific Crest Trail in the west that I think many of us are familiar with. And before long, the trail system has expanded. And today there are, 50 years later, there are 1,100 national recreation trails. There are 19 historic trails that have been added, and there are also now 11 national scenic trails. And while there are many trails in the United States, there's over 200,000 miles of them, there's a very high bar for establishing a national scenic trail. It takes an act of Congress for that to happen. And the trails are also created to, not just for recreation, but to conserve and protect nationally significant places, our scenic, historic, and cultural sites along their paths. And so when it comes to the Pacific Northwest Trail, it's been around for over 40 years, but it was only 11 years ago that it earned congressional designation as a National Scenic Trail, and that happens after decades of advocacy work by the Pacific Northwest Trail Association and our volunteers and partners. And that makes it a very young trail compared to the Pacific Crest Trail and AT, which have been around for 50 years. And there's still a lot of work to do to develop this trail corridor, a lot of opportunities to get involved.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to work on the Pacific Crest Trail for about 4 years and had a wonderful time. It really made me who I am today. And I was psyched at the opportunity to work on, one of the newest National Scenic Trails because of those opportunities to build new sections and develop the communities around. And just sort of be a part of a growing and trail on the rise, as opposed to some trail that's been established for as long as the AT or the PCT, which don't have a lot of sort of new angles going on. But here at the PNT, boy, there are innumerable challenges, which I think, most folks that enjoy the outdoors can appreciate. So that's why I came to the Pacific Northwest Trail about 1.5 years ago. And Eric and I actually met on the Pacific Crest Trail. We both hiked the PCT back in 2012 and formed a friendship that after many twists and turns has us working side by side along each other on the PNT. So it's another example of, the things that happen on the trail can lead to really fruitful relationships and meaningful work, even if it brings you back to civilization or.
Yeah, the trail unites people in a lot of different ways across 3 different states. And one of the things that makes National Scenic Trails different than some of our favorite local trails is their length and complexity. A National Scenic Trail must be over 100 miles in length. And in the case of the PNT, it's not contained within a single park, but it passes through many different administrative boundaries managed by many different organizations, as you can see from the logos at the bottom of this slide here. It passes through 3 national parks, Glacier National Park, North Cascades National Park, and Olympic National Park, as well as 7 national forests, and many other state lands and local municipal lands too. And here in the Puget Sound area, it passes through about 8 Washington state forests and 6 Washington state parks. On Fidalgo Island, the PNT also passes through 6 beautiful miles of trail in the Anacortes Community Forest Lands. And like the Anacortes Community Forest Lands, the PNT is managed for multiple use. Certain sections of it are open to equestrians and cyclists. Some sections are only open for day use, but much of it is open for camping. And that really provides endless opportunities for backpacking and getting out and seeing the trail. For most people, it takes a lifetime to get out and see the entire trail, but there are some people who see it a lot faster. Today, through hiking has become a more popular activity, and people have been through hiking the PNT for over 40 years now. You see in the top corner of the slide, Janet and Rex Bakel, who first through hiked the PNT in 1977, when it was still more of an idea and a concept than a trail is today. And then in the top right corner, we see some hikers who are out backpacking on the trail right now. So it presents quite an adventure. It provides endless opportunities for people to seek nature and solitude, and find some connection with those places out in some of the most remote mountain ranges in the Northwest. The journey is 1,200 miles. It takes most hikers about 2 months to do, and it's an unforgettable adventure that they have. Long distance hiking in general has become more popular in recent years, especially on other national scenic trails like the Pacific Crest Trail. But the PNT right now sees only a fraction of the users that the PCT and AT does. For most of its history, only about a dozen people have thru-hiked the trail, and that was certainly true when my wife and I thru-hiked in 2016. Since that time, about 75 people thru-hike the trail a year or so, although I think this year will be a little different due to COVID. A lot of people are postponing their trips or staying home, planning more modest adventures on the PNT. But one of the reasons that the PNT sees much less use relative to the Pacific Crest Trail, I think, is the stage of development it is in now as a very young National Scenic Trail. It's still very challenging, and PNT hikers have to be prepared to tackle those challenging terrain conditions that are found in some of those mountains where trails might not exist yet. In those areas, there may be off-trail scrambling, there's bushwhacking that they have to do, and even in certain coastal parts of the trail along Olympic National Park, anyone who's been on backpacking trips on the wilderness coast knows how rugged that terrain can be. And today, really only some of the toughest and most prepared hikers will make it from end to end on the PNT. To date, we figure roughly about 400 people have finished the Pacific Northwest Trail.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that makes our trail unique is, unlike the Pacific Crest Trail, the Appalachian Trail, and the Continental Divide, those all run north to south. whereas ours goes east-west and covers a lot more sort of different kinds of terrain. Starting on the Continental Divide out east, and it goes over, boy, 7 or 8 different major mountain ranges. It goes around the Puget Sound. It walks for about 80 miles on the Olympic Wilderness Coast, where, yeah, all those factors like tides and, very continually changing conditions, it really play a huge factor. And
yeah, it really shortens the season for the Pacific Northwest Trail too. Most hikers go westbound on the PNT, and their journeys begin in Glacier National Park, right near the Continental Divide. And they typically start right around now, most years. People start around the 4th of July, right after the snow is melted from most of the trails in the park, although it still lingers on the high passes for a few more weeks. And they start walking west. And they have to move rather quickly if they're going to cross all 1,200 miles before snow falls again on the Olympic Range and in the Cascades. And in about 900 miles, or about 6 weeks, westbound through hikers will reach the Puget Sound and city of Anacortes, which is quite a considerable change from what they've been experiencing in the remote, rugged ranges of Montana and Idaho, where they're living among grizzly bears and wolves for weeks on end. Here in the Puget Sound, the area is more populous. They can carry lighter packs. There are fresh food to eat, and a diversity of new animals to see, like seals and sandy beaches to walk among. And it just really speaks to the breadth and diversity of the experience, like you were talking about earlier, Sterling. And so folks who live in Anacortes around July and August can probably expect to see PNT hikers in town, resting up for the next leg of their journeys. Do you spot a group of people wearing ultralight backpacks, wearing old worn out trail runner shoes, and devouring an all-you-can-eat buffet somewhere, you'll have a pretty good reason to believe that they're PNT thru hikers. I know when I thru hiked the PNT and reached Anacortes, my wife and I stayed at the Cap Sante Inn for 2 nights, just because it was so nice to rest our feet and be able to enjoy all the nice restaurants in town, which makes a big change from eating dehydrated foods and carrying everything on your back.
Yeah, and whereas the trail has definitely gone through towns prior, a lot of them are sort of small mountain towns with limited resources. Anacortes, has all of the amenities, and whether it's a couple nights in a motel or some real high quality food, and maybe a gear store to resupply in, whether they're going to buy new shoes or a new backpack or something like that. It's another thing that makes our trail unique, is going through a cool town like Anacortes that, as you all know, is sort of a melting pot for all the demographics in the area. And it could be a real highlight. We always encourage them to take some time and check out the towns like Anacortes and see some of the cultural things, whether that's, museums or all the different things that you can do in Anacortes. But aside from walking through the ACFL, which of course they're bound to do, but it's cool. I think that the trail goes right through downtown for the most part and winds its way through some of the neighborhoods, and then gets into the forest lands and heads south. Towns like cities like Anacortes, smaller towns that are found in the inland Northwest, just are very much a part of the experience of any trip to the PNT. Even day trips begin and end in the communities along its path. For thru hikers, it's a very big part of the experience, because they depend completely on these towns as they're traveling without any kind of personal transportation. They're shopping in stores along the way. They mail packages to local post offices, and they're staying at local motels to get a chance to sleep on some soft sheets and get a shower and all of those nice things you like to do after you've been in wilderness for weeks on end. I haven't hiked the entire trail, but I did do the entire section from town, from Anacortes, from downtown all the way to Deception Pass. And I stopped at the Erie store there and got some ice cream halfway through my hike. And it was great to sort of spend a little time in the store there and meet some folks and get a nice cold ice cream or a soda and be on my way. So that was really fun.
Yeah, and the experience in the Sound is so wonderful in that way, where someone can leave downtown Anacortes in the morning and be at the Erie store and on Fidalgo Island later that evening and just carry a few hours or even a day's worth of provisions. And that stands in contrast to the wilderness sections of the PNT, where people have to carry 7 or 9 days of food at a time, which can weigh up to 20 or 30 pounds, depending on what kind of food you're carrying. So it's nice to have a light pack as you travel, across the Puget Sound section of the trail. But these communities really are a big part of the trail experience. They're also a very big part of maintaining and building this trail, and they really always have been. The PNTA and Ron Strickland have always worked with volunteers and local stakeholders in the development and enhancement of the trail. Right here in this photo, we see a local volunteer organization called SWIPMO that is active maintaining and building trails in Skagit, Whatcom, and Island counties. They have helped build a lot of the trails in Deception Pass State Park that make up the Pacific Northwest Trail, as well as on Blanchard Mountain. And here we see a dedication ceremony that took place on National Trails Day a few years ago for the John Tercey Trail, which is partly located in Deception Pass State Park. That trail location built about 1.5 miles of new tread, but it removed about 3 or 4 miles of a previous route of the PNT that was aligned along an open motorized route. And that's part of making the PNT better, relocating the trail for motorized routes and realigning the trail along foot-friendly hiking trails that are much safer and more enjoyable to explore.
Yeah, and I think the Anacortes Community Forest Lands is a really excellent example of the way that communities can come together and help, trail conditions improve throughout time. We're always looking to make the route live up to its title of National Scenic Trail and pass through sort of the most aesthetically pleasing landscapes and communities. So yeah, we're really appreciative of all the communities up and down our trail. And we hope they can all, be as embracing and sort of helpful as Anacortes has been throughout the years. I think the Community Forest Lands, mission is really one that, aligns with our goal quite well. And so we're very fortunate to be able to have, I think it's 8 beautiful miles go through the ACFL and, have all the different user groups be embraced by the community of Anacortes. So it's sort of one of our model towns, we like to think. And
yeah, there are, the Anacortes Community Forest Lands is the citizen involvement in its management is very similar to the model for maintaining and managing the PNT. And we have plenty of opportunities to get involved that you can learn about more on our website. Again, as we mentioned earlier, volunteer events have been on hold for most of this year, but we hope to have some soon and have some soon on working on the Anacortes Community Forest Lands section of the PNT. So I'm going to pass the presentation over to Sterling for a moment, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the work that the Pacific Northwest Trail Association does.
Sure. So we are the official nonprofit partner of the U.S. Forest Service, whose goals are to manage and protect and promote the Pacific Northwest National Scenic Trail. And that comes with a lot of responsibilities, including managing trail information and including the map sets that we make. Eric here is happy to help users of all varieties, plan their trips and get out on the PNT whenever possible. And every year he goes through the map sets that we offer for free on our website for download that folks can use to get out and do sections or even the entire Pacific Northwest Trail. So that's a really, I think, cool resource, and it takes a lot of time and energy on his part, but it helps us build that community and really get to know our users, which is something that sort of the older and larger and more established National Scenic Trails aren't able to do. But we all do a lot of outreach and education, whether it's events like this or going to schools, or we've given presentations at the Mountaineers down in Seattle, and we have little get-togethers up in Bellingham, and all along the trail. We really just want to bring awareness to the trail so that the communities can embrace the users and sort of adopt it and take ownership of it, because it is a national resource that like national parks and national forests are owned by the citizens of this country. And so again, it's a uniquely American idea, perhaps. And the more we can sort of bring awareness to that, the more excited we can get people to be about it and hopefully adopt it as part of their own. My role here is to do kind of oversee trail maintenance. It takes a lot to keep this trail clear and in good walking condition. We spend a lot of our time just making sure the logs that fall down every winter get cleared from across the trail. But we also, improve the walking surface whenever possible. Nobody likes to have wet feet on a hike. So it takes a lot to go into maintaining the tread and drainage features of a trail. And it takes a lot of hard work, but it really pays off when you're able to invest, whether it's an afternoon or an entire week, into a project, and then see the fruits of hard labor in the out of doors and the camaraderie that comes with that sort of stuff. And one of those things is we employ local youth and young adults from trailside communities and even around Washington to go out there and spend a summer doing the work of maintaining the trail. It's important, I think, for these folks to have opportunities to get out there and spend their summer doing meaningful stuff. And I think a third of young people these days only have summer jobs, whereas it used to be a lot more prevalent. I think it was the expectation maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago that everybody had a summer job. It's become a sort of a less and less common thing amongst young people, but we're proud to offer these positions. They pay, fairly well, and we provide all of their field-based meals. But, I think the real benefits come in the leadership and work experience and sort of eye-opening opportunities that come with working on public lands and doing this kind of labor. And it's a great entree into any job in natural resource management. And we work in the front country, of course, where we'll just set out every day from the trailhead and do projects. But our crews are really special because they get to work in the backcountry a lot. Often these hitches last 8 to 10 days in wilderness settings, and they get packed in by horse and mule packers who will carry in their food and their supplies and their tools. And they'll get to camp out in some really special, unique places where not everybody has the opportunity to go for these long periods. And whether that's working in national forests or national parks, they get to really immerse themselves in the landscape and the work and really develop a relationship both to the trail and one another. When you work and eat and sleep and live kind of right on top of one another for that long, you're bound to form relationships that last a lifetime. And that's what I got into years ago. And one of the reasons I'm still here is because I've had these, this community really embrace me, and I've been able to sort of make a career out of maintaining hiking trails, which I think is a really fortunate thing. I'm super lucky to have been able to do that. But what with our season being so short, we typically run our crews from June to September, and we really have to get out there and make the most of the conditions, because it takes a while for the snow to melt out. Right now, we're still battling the snow melting out around Mount Baker, where we're hoping to send crews. And it won't be too long before the snow starts to fly, or maybe the late season fires sort of shut us out of other landscapes too. So it's a really dynamic work environment that always needs, being flexible and working hard and being able to sort of adapt and roll with the punches. So I think that's another thing is it can open folks' eyes as to what a career has to be. It's not necessarily flipping burgers or pumping gas or something like that, but this is a great way to get experience, whether you want to become a wildland firefighter or a wilderness ranger or an education ranger with the Park Service or even law enforcement or something like that. You know, any walk of occupation you go into will certainly benefit from spending a summer out on the trail, and really being empowered and getting to know your own limitations and your own abilities. And yeah, boy, the leadership opportunities, whether you're formally a leader or just a crew member, you're challenged all the time to decide, you know, how the workday should go. You can get involved with the pre-project planning logistics, or whether it's simple, like, you know, figuring out what the crew is going to eat at the end of the day. That hearty meal at the end of a day is oh so important when you've been hiking and swinging a Pulaski like the kid in the picture has for the last 10 hours. You know, having a delicious, satiating meal at the end of the day is uncomparable.
Yeah, it's challenging work, and much of the PNT is located in some remote mountain areas, and backcountry hitches that our performance trail crews do are really the only way to get those parts of the trail efficiently maintained, because they're so hard to reach. It can take sometimes a day or two of hiking just to reach a work site. And of course, the work is physical, and it's physically challenging experience for young people to have. And they're out there learning problem-solving skills and teamwork, working together as a team to deal with these challenges that happen out in the field. And we'd like to think it's a valuable life experience that applies towards, you know, any career path. That it's just very rewarding, something definitely unique that we're able to offer, and proud to do.
Yeah, the young man in the picture there is a Western Washington University student who was on his first trail crew last summer, but he did such an excellent job that he's now an assistant crew leader with us. And I think that is a real testament to the trail and the work, and hopefully the organization as well, that people want to keep coming back and challenging themselves and seeing the growth that this sort of work offers. So I was really psyched to welcome Nate back to the organization this year. And there's lots of different kinds of work. For sure, you always need to do what we call corridor management. And the corridor is sort of the opening through which the trail passes. And, you know, we spend a lot of time in the Pacific Northwest cutting back the vegetation that grows up every year, every winter, and every summer. It just keeps growing. So there's always a lot of work to do, trimming that back with loppers and pruning saws and that kind of thing. But of course, there's a lot of logs come down. You know, depending on the area, some of them can be quite large, since the trail is over on the Olympic Peninsula. You know, some of them are 6 feet across in diameter, and if you're lucky, they fall right down on top of the trail and need to be cut 5 or 6 times. But over in the Pasayten Wilderness on the Okanagan National Forest, just east of North Cascades National Park, the trees are a lot smaller. However, they're a lot more plentiful, and they come down by the thousands. And last year we had one crew cut over 600 trees alone over the course of the summer. And unlike the young woman in the picture, they were not using chainsaws, but they were using crosscut, those old-timey push-pull saws from back in the day, which are what we need to do to cut out logs in wilderness areas, which is still a real cool thing, you know? I think this trail work has the opportunity to remind people of our history and heritage. Whether that's working with the mule packers that get our gear in, or using some of these primitive tools like crosscut saws and you know, shovels and rakes and implements of destruction that come with this remote work. You know, even though a chainsaw will go a lot faster, it doesn't do much good when you run out of gas and you can't fuel it up. So those crosscuts, you know, with that hearty meal every day can keep running all week long, and it's really impressive to see the work that they can do. A lot of interesting puzzles, you know, come out of them when they fall all jack straw on top of one another. So it can be a real rewarding challenge. And then of course we maintain the walking surface, which we call the tread. It's got to drain properly. We say the 2 basic principles of trail maintenance are get the water off the trail or the trail out of the water. You know, while it's not rocket science, it can really be a lot more challenging than it seems sometimes, because that water just, you know, erodes the walking surface and leads to further problems down the line. So whether that's building, you know, timber or rock sort of retaining structures or drainage features, or, you know, boardwalks, what we call punch-ins, or turnpiking, there's a lot of different ways to sort of go about meeting our challenges of getting the water off the trail. And then because we're a newer National Scenic Trail, we still do some construction, which is really fun. Like Eric mentioned, the Tercey Trail just south of the Anacortes Forest Lands. You know, whenever possible, we want to move the trail to a more optimal location where it's a better hiking experience, whether that's because it's it keeps your feet dry or the view is better. But we also want to practice sustainable trail maintenance and construction techniques, so that it does require as little maintenance as possible, because with 1,200 plus miles of trail to look after, and in such short summers, our plate is always full with projects, and sometimes that involves things like building bridges, or North Cascades has a new hand tram cable car going in. So there's lots of fun things to do out there in terms of new trail construction and maintenance.
Yeah, and some of those construction is minor realignments that can help improve water quality and things like that, right?
Yeah, that's true. People think that trails are primarily just for recreation when they're actually part of the entire ecosystem. Boy, the hydrology and the geology that go into them help to protect the watersheds and the habitats for different plant and animal species. I always ask my crews, I say, who are trails made for? And everybody says, oh, trails are made for people. Well, I counter with, well, actually, trails are just as important for the landscape and the ecosystem. People can go wherever they want to go. I mean, look at rock climbers. They can go straight up a face with very little trouble sometimes. The trail, when designed properly, keeps people to a certain area. And while that small little corridor is impacted significantly, it protects the greater landscape, and it provides, vistas and protection, and just sort of an opportunity for folks to experience the landscape without, stomping all over the riparian areas and the sensitive, habitats and stuff like that. So even those minor sort of adjustments are really crucial to protecting the overall landscape from the forest whenever possible. As we all know, everything is connected and all part of a greater system. And so trails are definitely a part of that. And watershed management is huge. And as we all know, water is a very special resource that we all need to protect whenever possible. So trails go into making sure that our water stays clear and drinkable.
Yeah, and 1,200 miles of trail is a lot to maintain, and we can't do that alone. We work with partners, we work with volunteers to get that done, and it's great to see our community coming together to help us achieve that. And that a community involves so many different organizations, right?
Yeah, our trail, it's cool. There are a lot of different communities on and around the trail, and seeing where they overlap is a really interesting, special thing. There are all the different user groups, whether there's hikers or mountain bikers or horseback riders, the equestrians, or whether it's the trail maintenance organizations or volunteers, or our intrepid thru hikers that try to do the whole thing in one go. They all lend themselves to communities, which then sort of spread out through the towns and, the cities by and through which the trail passes, which is really cool. We are a membership organization, and the PNTA employs our crew members as well. This year, I think we're employing, 24-ish youth and young adult from all over the state to get out and protect the resource. And often, more so in normal years as opposed to this year, they work right alongside volunteers. And it's a really cool thing to see volunteers work next to, young people, and professionals work next to folks that are sort of doing it in a more leisurely recreational capacity. And while they'll be maintaining a little section of trail, some of our hikers will come past, and you can see all these people, get together, and whenever possible, maybe they'll share a meal and swap stories and really just develop sort of, that community that's so important to keeping things going together. And then people like to, support the different users in different ways. And some of the thru hikers, are blessed by coming across a cooler full of soda out on the trail by what we call trail angels, or a good
or in person. We prefer,
right.
Things have changed a bit with Trail Magic since
it's true.
Back to 2017.
Yeah, we don't recommend leaving coolers so much, but
it's so great to see people. I'm sorry.
Nope.
You have that trails don't just happen, and when the trails users and volunteers and paid trail crews meet and interact, people get a better sense of how that works, and we can instill the values of volunteerism, we hope, in the trails users, especially the ones who use it the most, which are certainly through hikers and local users. So it's great to see them return and come back to the trail and give something back after it's given them so much, as trails have for Sterling and I.
Yeah, we work closely with the National Forests and the National Parks and the Bureau of Land Management and then state land managers. And often those are the same people that are out there using the trails on their weekends. So it's not uncommon to walk by a colleague on one of my weekend hikes. And so it's great to just have all those good vibes floating around and yeah, seeing all the different folks come together and the way the trail brings people together, literally and figuratively connects people.
Really does. And so, yeah, I think there are a lot of ways we're working to improve this young National Scenic Trail, and volunteers can be a big part of that. Isn't that right?
Yeah, volunteers are, immensely important to our trail and the culture around the trail. Being a newer trail, we don't have signage up throughout, as you all well know, and we're working with different agencies, across the state in Idaho and Montana to get our service mark up. And there's a picture of actually a friend of ours who we met hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, coming out to do a little bit of work on his free time, hanging what we call our Thunderbird, which is the service mark or a reassurance marker that let folks know that they're on the Pacific Northwest National Scenic Trail. And we've actually been working with ASA and another group called Leadership Skagit recently about getting some signs at the trailheads that let people know that the PNT goes through the Anacortes Community Forest Lands. And when things get back to normal, we hope to pick up where we left off with that project and get some kiosks up at the northern end and some signs at the southern end to talk about the resource and the intersection between the ACFL and the Pacific Northwest Trail. And yeah, that helps us, let everybody know where they are and what kind of use is allowed on the trail, and whether or not camping is allowed. So those signs are really important for us to communicate our missions and our goals and have everybody be responsible users out there, because it's really important that folks sort of know and obey the rules and practice leave no trace principles whenever possible, because it is sort of a collective resource that we all want to cherish and use for years and years to come. And a couple of folks that don't respect it properly can sort of leave a sour taste in everybody's mouth. So, there are some routes that are open to all kinds. We do have sections of the trail that walk along, roads where folks can drive their car. We're always looking to improve those, but we're also looking to just make it safer for our users. And
ultimately, motorized routes are incompatible with National Scenic Trails, so we're looking to relocate the trail off of those roads and onto foot-friendly trails wherever possible. And that's part of the journey of a National Scenic Trail from its first designation as a young trail. That's something that could take decades to accomplish, and something that we're working with a variety of partners to do. And the last thing that we're working on as well is the Pacific Northwest National Scenic Trail Advisory Council, which will ultimately produce the comprehensive plan for the trail, which will also help bring the trail further along in its development.
Yeah, each trail has a comprehensive plan, and we're hoping in the next couple of years that ours can get finalized, and that'll give us a little bit more leeway in terms of getting to that optimal route that I was talking about. So we're very excited for the years to come.
And one last thing to mention here, we've hardly scratched the surface, showing you some of the beauty, showing you some of the adventure to be found out on the Pacific Northwest Trail. There is a wonderful documentary series that's currently being developed now by a group of folks who hiked the trail a few years ago, and it's coming soon. We definitely invite you to visit throughfilm.com to check out some of the trailers that are available and show some of that adventure so well, and get inspired for your next trip on the trail. Hopefully that documentary will be out very soon, and we're all very excited to see the finished series out there.
Yeah, it's beautiful footage. I highly recommend going to throughfilm.com, and I think they've got some short clips there as well as on some other video services like YouTube and Vimeo. But boy, they brought a real professional camera setup out there, and it really captures some of the majestic landscapes and the untouched nature of it. And yeah, it's very well done. And we heard that it's going to be 7 episodes that they're currently shopping around to distributors and taking to film festivals and stuff. So definitely check it out, and hopefully when that hits, it'll be great. Maybe we could even do a viewing or something here and get people excited for it, because it's really well made. So if you have a minute and want to learn more, get a taste of what it would be like to undertake the 1,200 plus mile hike, check it out. It's cool.
So I think now we'd like to turn the presentation over to Mackenzie, see if we have any questions that we can answer for any of you. I'd be happy to do that.
All right, thank you, Eric and Sterling. That was awesome. It looks like we have a couple questions. And this is a good reminder for anybody who has anything that they're curious about. Go ahead and put that in the Q&A box and we'll get to it. All right. First question, and I believe this is in reference to when you mentioned that there were about 400 people who had completed the trail. This says, when you say 400, how do you know that? From what date did tracking start? Does this include south to north and also trail runners and horseback?
Yeah, it's a great question. Most of our knowledge of who has finished through hiking the trail is just self-reported individuals who report that they finished the trail in the honor system. So we really don't have a way of independently verifying that they've hiked the entire trail. So those are the people who've come forward. There might be others who through hiked that haven't yet reported that to us. But it's definitely, I think, credible to believe that for most of its history, only about less than 12 people have through hiked the trail per year, based on some of the Good Samaritans that help hikers along the way and some other ways of sort of independently verifying that. Yeah, in comparison, about 4,000 people a year attempt to through hike the Pacific Crest Trail. So 400 is a very small number, and 12 or 75 people attempting the PNT is certainly just a fraction of the use that we see on those longer established and more popular trails.
Great, thank you. It looks like this next one is more of a comment than a question, but here's a message from Norm Samuelson, who says, in addition to the ACFL, oh, disappeared. In addition to the ACFL, I work with the Friends of Whidbey Island State Parks, and I am the team leader for the trails in Fort Eby. If you find anything that needs to be done in this section through Fort Eby, please contact me. And I'm sure Friends of the Forest can facilitate arranging contact information between you.
Great, thank you so much, Norm. That's very generous of you. Yeah, we really enjoy working with all of our partners. And I'm actually hoping to go out to Whidbey Island the week after next to do a sizable chunk. And I know that there's a place, yeah, where we're hoping to make a little better connection to the Bluff Trail to get down to the beach. And so after I scout that out, maybe I'll be in contact with you. It would be great to chat about it sometime.
Our next question is from Chrissy. Can you share links to resources for trip planning?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have several of those on our website, and we can definitely help to share those through the chat. It looks like we have a great one up there already. The Know Before You Go section of our trail has information on getting permits, understanding requirements for food storage, which can vary quite a bit on the PNT. Those food storage requirements are designed to protect wildlife, especially bears. The first 400 miles of the trail, the eastern 400 are in grizzly country, so food storage is particularly important out there. It's also very important out in Olympic National Park, where there's a sizable population of black bears, and of course, other animals that might be seeking food rewards out on the wilderness coast. So we provide links to all of that information on our website to the land managers who operate those public lands, and often they are the very best source for information. But we do compile all of those in one place so that you can see at a glance all the information you need to know to explore the whole trail at once if you'd like to do that.
Yeah, if you've got a specific section, I always encourage folks to talk to the land manager as well. They'll have sort of the most recent beta on, the trails that connect up to the PNT or whatever, whether it's a ranger station in a national park or forest, or one of their websites. They're great resources, and in general, they're very kind people. Being a former ranger myself, I like to think that they're all out there eager to help and get people safely and responsibly up to the PNT or wherever they're trying to go.
Yeah, we're also happy to answer your questions by chat over social media on our Facebook page, on the PNTA Facebook page, as well as the PNT Hikers Facebook group. We also take your questions by email at info@pnt.org. And we will also be happy to take your phone call. If you have any questions, you're welcome to give us a call as well.
Yeah, our phone numbers are on the website, pnt.org. And we're both happy to talk about everything from current conditions to route planning and trip planning to ways to get involved, whether that's in volunteer capacities, or if you know a young person or someone else that would like to sort of maybe transition to a career in trail maintenance. Let us know, and we're happy to talk to them about the positions that we fly every year. And we like to hire locals whenever possible.
Awesome. Thank you. Our next question is from our very own Friends of the Forest board member, Bill. And his question is there any signage on Fidalgo Island?
There are trail markers in Deception Pass State Park and some of the other state parks on Fidalgo Island, as I recall. Those tend to need regular maintenance and update, as sometimes they can be damaged. But yes, there are some markers up on Fidalgo Island.
Okay. Next question from Sharon. Didn't Ron write a book?
Ron did. Ron wrote several books. Probably the first one that I think I'd recommend reading if you're interested in learning more about the PNT and his process for creating it is a book called Pathfinder. Ron also did a lot of his scouting hikes for the trail to find different routes that might eventually become what we think of as the PNT today with a tape recorder. And he interviewed many of the folks who lived in those mountain towns, lived in coastal villages, and recorded their narrative histories for some of his other writings. So you can go to ronstrickland.com and find out, subscribe to his newsletter, and find out about all the books he's written about the PNT and about the Pacific Northwest as well.
Great. Looks like we have another question from Sharon. Are the maps big enough to read so I can just hike east of Blanchard? Catch the trail off of Highway 9, for instance.
Yeah, they should be big enough to read. In fact, you can download them on the website and blow them up to whatever size best suits your needs. But yeah, the trail does go, all the way from highway. Well, I mean, the maps represent every mile of the trail. So if you're looking to hike east off Highway 9, you can check that out. It goes up Mount
It's Anderson Mountain.
Anderson Mountain. Yep. Up and over Anderson Mountain, and I was just out there a couple weeks ago, and it was beautiful. And there's some other feeder trails, so you can make some nice little loops out of it for sure.
Yeah, and the maps, they're at a pretty high resolution. You can print them not just 8.5 by 11. That's how most people use them if they're through hiking the trail, but you can do 11 by 17 as well, and they'll still be good quality.
Sorry, she said east off Highway 9. That would be Lyman Mountain.
Oh, okay, east.
But yep, we've got all there, and yeah, you can blow them up to whatever size best suits your needs, and they're fairly detailed, and they've got some connector trails and stuff like that.
Our next question is from Kathleen. Did you say a majority of people tend to hike from west to east, and why is that?
They actually go the other way. They start in Glacier National Park. I'd say 90+% of our thru hikers hike westbound. And that's typically, I think, just because, well, overall it is more downhill, so perhaps a little bit easier depending on what your knees can take. But I think Ron Strickland's initial idea was to sort of recreate, you know, what it would be like for a drop of rain to fall on the Rocky Mountains and wend its way all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And so one of the cool things about the trail is the western terminus out on the Olympic coast is at Cape Alava, which is the westernmost point in the lower 48. It's right out there by Ozette. The Ozette Loop or the Ozette Triangle is a real popular hike that gives you a great taste of what that would be like hiking out there on the beach, as well as through some of the forests through there. And yeah, I think that go west mentality is, I think, just really appealing to a lot of folks, and maybe even part of the American culture overall.
Yeah, it might just be tradition. It seems to be the most popular way to go. It just sort of captures the imagination, I think, finishing on the coast and, you know, wiggling your toes in the sand out there. But in recent years, we've had more hikers trying to go eastbound. And on our website, we do have a blog post where we interviewed 2 eastbound hikers to find out, you know, what was that like, because that experience is so relatively unique to what most people are doing.
Thank you. We have a question from Dawn. What is the route in Skagit County?
So in Skagit County, the route comes down off the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest, and it hops across the line between Skagit and Whatcom at least a couple times, and then it comes down over Josephine Mountain. Is that in Skagit, or is that up in Whatcom?
Skagit.
Yeah, so it comes over Josephine Mountain, and then Lyman Mountain, and then crosses Highway 9, goes up over Anderson. This is, again, a westbound hike. Goes up over Anderson, comes back down, and then climbs, sort of goes around the ridge around Alger Alp, and then it crosses Highway 99 and goes under the interstate, and then it goes up the east side of Blanchard on the British Army Trail. It goes past Lily and Lizard Lakes on Blanchard State Forest, and then if you want to take the Spur Trail out to the ever popular and famous Oyster Dome overlook, that's really nice. Then it comes out and it heads, let's see, south on Chuckanut Drive for a little while, and then it goes right through downtown Edison, which is, again, a cool little community. I think that makes the PNT special, is the fact that it goes right through the downtown there, and you can stop at that great bakery and some of those other places, and then it heads down, and then it parallels Highway 20 for a little while on the bike path. But before it gets out to Anacortes, it takes some of those cool things. It goes across the old train trestle and the Tommy Thompson Trail before it hits Anacortes, and then, you know, goes through town and out down south via the Community Forest Lands, and then, of course, it turns into Island County down there at the Deception Pass Bridge.
Awesome.
Very thorough.
Thank you.
We have a comment from Monica, who's one of Friends of the Forest former board members, and she says, "Thank you for all this information. I'm excited to explore."
You're very welcome. Thank you for attending. And yeah, we really encourage everybody to check out the different sections. There's some beautiful hikes all over the area right near here. So hopefully I'll see you out there, because it is peak summer right now, and there's lots of great hiking to be done.
Yeah, and if folks are Instagram users, we welcome them to use the hashtag crown to coast, as in crown of the continent to the Pacific coast. If you hashtag your photos with that, or if you just want to search that hashtag, you can see photos from people out using the trail for day hikes, out through hiking, and it's just fun to find other people who are out just having fun on the trail and seeing their photos and living vicariously through them. So.
Yeah, we've also got our organization's account, Pacific Northwest Trail, on Instagram, and Eric manages that, but you'll see all kinds of pictures from our landscapes and the hikers, and of course a bunch of trail crews and trail maintenance stuff, and we even, you know, post pictures of volunteers. So if you come out to a volunteer project, maybe you'll get your picture on the internet. But yeah, we've got a Facebook page too, and there are all the different means to get a hold of us. So definitely don't hesitate to reach
All right, it looks like we've worked our way through the questions so far, so maybe give everybody just another minute or so. If you have any last questions, you can put them in the Q&A box. Otherwise, right now, I'll turn it over to Asa.
Right on. Thank you so much, Eric and Sterling. I am just about ready to head over to Montana and start hiking myself with those beautiful pictures that you showed us. You know, it's a very unique trail system and something we're really lucky to have so close and so accessible. So thank you for caring for it. Thank you for, you know, working with local communities to make sure that it happens. Eric, I'm curious, since you have hiked the whole thing, what was just your favorite, you know, overarching takeaway from hiking the entire PNT?
Well, you know, the experience is so different than some of the other long trails I've hiked. And one of the things I love about the PNT is that it starts and finishes with just incredibly breathtakingly beautiful scenery. You know, Glacier National Park doesn't lack anything for views. And it's just so wonderful to start the trail in such an exhilaratingly beautiful environment. And to finish at one in Olympic. And in the middle, there are so many other wonderful things to see too. And it's just amazing to see how many landscapes you can travel through on foot and how many different people you meet with so many different lifestyles in the Northwest, where you meet them directly because you're walking on foot. And I think when you're traveling in a car, it's so easy to stay within your circle, and traveling on foot is just a magical way to go and see this part of the country.
Absolutely, right on. Well, thank you to both of you so much. I think that there are no more questions. So really quick for folks, you know, I talked a little bit about how we are hoping to get community hikes going again sometime soon. And one of the hikes that we are really excited to do that we want to put together is to hike the entire section of the PNT that runs through the forest land, all the way from 23rd Street up at Cranberry Lake, all the way down to Lake Erie there. So depending on when that is actually able to happen, maybe we'll rope Sterling or Eric into coming and joining us along and answering questions and getting to explore that whole section of trail, because that would be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Right on. So a huge thank you to everybody that joined us today. You know, if you do have questions, you can always email us, info@friendsoftheacfl.org. I also put in our website earlier for donations, but you can always go to www.friendsoftheacfl.org and navigate through our webpage, and also pnt.org as well, to check out any information you might be curious about the trail. And also, if you want to support the Pacific Northwest Trail Association, you can do that through their website as well. So we're hoping to be able to work with these guys moving into the future, and really happy to have them here today. So thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Great to see you all, and hope to see you out on the trail.
Right on. Thank you so much. And like I said, this will be on our YouTube site. So if you miss something or want to send it along to a friend, head over to our YouTube site and check it out. And hopefully we will see you in the forest sometime in the not too distant future here. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great Wednesday evening, and we'll see you soon.